The PGMOL. Are you happy with that title? The PG. It sounds a bit clumsy, but we know what it means.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Jim. Morning, Simon.
Morning.
Yeah, a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? It's a name that's got the words game and match in it in the same title. So it's a curious one, isn't it? So whether we need to change that, I'll give that some thought. But yeah, it's quite a well-established organisation now, been around for 22 years, providing professional refereeing services to the top divisions in the country.
So Howard, we'll get right into this because time's of the essence, and if we can, we'll take some calls as well, maybe further down the line. 03717 223344. Less than 6 months into the role, has it been what you expected, or is it more challenging than you thought it might be? In
many ways, it's been what I expected. I've got to say, I think the level of intensity and scrutiny has risen since I was last involved in the English game. I came off the field in 2014. I worked for a year within the backroom staff and then went away to the US and managed the referees in Major League Soccer. But the kind of lack of forgiveness these days is pretty obvious to me. And the officials and the players, everybody, of course, on the field, on the sidelines, are working under extra pressure scrutiny. It all means so much to everybody, and that's what makes it great as well. Of course, we understand that's the place to be. We all have to be the best we can be to keep pace.
There are those in the game, and there are those in here who haven't taken to VAR. Danny Murphy's one, I'll get to that. But as a former referee who had no VAR yourself, has it improved the game, Howard? Yeah,
I think it has. I remember thinking back in the later sort of like years of my career, situations that would happen in games that I was refereeing, big Sunday afternoon games, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man U, Liverpool, and there'd be something happen in the game. I would make a decision. It might be a situation where there's a foul close to the edge of the penalty area, and I would give a decision based on that one view at full speed, knowing that 10 seconds later, millions of people are watching the replay at home. They know whether it's inside or outside the penalty area, but the person who needs that information, i.e. me, didn't have it, and was hoping till the end of the game that I got it right. Now we've got this tool that we can use that can avoid those clear errors, provided that they are clear, to avoid those incorrect outcomes, those decisions that could affect the outcome of the game. So I think the referees enjoy it. I would have enjoyed using it, and just doing it, just applying it in a way that has that sort of like minimum interference, but gets the maximum benefit that we're looking to achieve, I think is really important.
I think the tough question, Simon, for Howard is, can he and others at the PGMOL ever make people fall in love with VAR? Because everybody's got their own perceptions of it, haven't they?
Yeah, but I think there's a misdirection here. VAR is just humans interacting with a piece of tech and making decisions. And I think ultimately it's down to the quality of refereeing. I think the question is, because I think it's unfair. I think the judgment calls are fair. I think unfair. I think the observations being made about the only people that are not allowed to make mistakes are referees is unfair, because I think managers and players make mistakes, and the standards these guys are getting held to is wrong. But I also think that there is an issue around the quality of refereeing, engaging with the tech that was brought in to help, not embarrass, to help, not hinder. And it seems to me, alongside the unrealistic expectations, there's also a lack of quality in some of the decision-making and some of the refereeing going on.
OK, let's take an example. Howard, during Liverpool's 0-0 draw with Chelsea, Kai Havertz had the ball in the net shortly after half-time. On-field referee Anthony Taylor initially gave the goal, believing that the ball came off the chest, before Chris Kavanagh on VAR advised him, overturn that decision. Here's how it went down from the official's point of view.
It's Come on, field. Wait a minute. On-field decision's goal, because I think it hits Havertz's chest.
Okay, mate, just checking the goal.
Point of contact there.
Yeah. That's wrong.
I'll just play through.
Play through. Yeah, so just frame it on the arm. Right, that's clearly arm. Yeah. Tails.
Yeah.
I recommend you disallow the goal. It's handball, leads immediately to the ball in the net.
Okay, so it's factual, so we're going...
Factual, handball, penalty spot. It's on the penalty spot.
OK, so it all worked, Howard, and that was right. So transparency won the day there. A peek behind the curtain, as you call it. And that's progression, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the first time people have heard that. We've been playing these things out to clubs over the last few months, and also to the broadcasters behind the scenes, but we wanted the football public to also be able to hear that. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward example. Of course, the referee on the field doesn't appreciate the ball's come off Kai Havertz's hand and gone straight into the goal, and we know that that's not allowed anymore within the laws of the game. And of course, the VAR can see the footage quite clearly. It's what we call a factual review. We don't need to send the referee to the screen, because the only thing we're looking at is a matter of fact: did the ball hit the arm of Havertz or not, and as soon as we've established that, we just overturn the decision instead of wasting more time. And I think also, that was a good example of how it's really tough for the referee to see that in real time. He's looking through the back of Havertz, and the VAR works well in those circumstances. But I think Simon made a really good point. I think good officiating starts on the field. Good officiating needs to be the way that the referee manages the game, makes decisions. VAR sits in the background as that safety net to rectify the clear errors in a sport that throws up so much subjectivity and a lot of grey zone that, decisions split opinion. Your show is based in many cases around difference of opinion on things. And if we use VAR in that subjective grey part of the game, then, you'll see a decision that you think is correct and it'll get overturned to a different decision. And you think, hang on, where's my good decision gone? And then the next week it's somebody else who's feeling the same. And within a month, you've kind of lost the faith of everybody. Because we're using it in an inconsistent way in your eyes.
Yeah.
So by only stepping in for the clear ones like the Havertz, where clearly the ball strikes the arm, no debate, we get involved with VAR, rectify that situation.
Is there merit in this message from Kev, who's a West Ham fan, Howard? Jim asked Howard, last night on Sky, they showed VAR decisions that ended with the correct outcome. So everybody seemed to be comfortable in studio with it. It would be good to hear from Howard about some of the moments that haven't been the correct outcome. I mean, you know what it's like, Howard. I can guarantee you, well, what are you, about 6'6"? You can hardly walk down the street without somebody, there's Howard Webb, I'm going to chin him on X incident at X day. They need a stepladder to chin you right enough. But I mean, for example, at the weekend, Joachim Andersen seeming to punch Lerma right on the nose and bust his nose. Yeah. And yet nothing was done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be wrong of me to sit here and say that everything's been perfect this year. Of course not. We've made some errors. We're asking human beings to sit in the VAR hub at Stockley Park and make a judgment on whether something is clearly wrong. Not, also recognising when there's subjectivity in the decision, not re-refereeing the game. We don't want that. And sometimes that judgment is not made accurately.
Yeah.
And then obviously our job is to reduce that variability on that judgment to make sure that what we've said will happen, i.e. VAR will step in when something's clearly wrong, happens as often as possible. In a world where humans will make judgments under pressure, under a time pressure as well, trying to apply a process. VARing is not just like watching TV at home. There's a process of diligence we have to go through to make sure we don't miss something. And we're training the officials all the time through that process, through those judgments being consistent, and we've had some that are wrong. But we've almost rectified 100 errors in the right way this season as well. So the positives outweigh the negatives. Last night we showed a range of clips. We thought it was good to show some different type of situations.
Yeah, of course.
Mostly correct. There was an incorrect one as well involving Bournemouth.
Yeah.
But going down this road, we know we're going to have to show everything.
But there's an argument, Howard, when it gets into the area of subjectivity, your boys and girls don't have the skill set to be able to understand what a subjective decision needs to be made. There's an argument being made by certain sources that unless you get the skill set into your organisation, whether it be ex-players coming in and being involved in Stockley Park, that you're always going to be in this area where you guys are outmanned. You'll know the rule book inside out, upside down. You'll be able to recant it on a daily basis. But when it comes to making decisions about a situation where simulation or something that's subjective needs to be involved, your guys haven't had that skill set at this moment in time and are unlikely to get it in the future.
Yeah, a really interesting point, by the way, because when we came through the refereeing ranks, I started in South Yorkshire as a 18-year-old playing at the same time as refereeing, but only playing at a local level. And then my refereeing took off. I did well. I managed players well, that sort of thing, and came through because of my skills on the field. And then suddenly those referees that we see on the Premier League now are being asked to do some VARing as well. Yeah. And many of them can transfer those skills, but it's not always transferable. And my job is to recognise those officials who have got that skill set to be able to do the things we're asking them to do, think clearly, communicate with the AVAR, be decisive, all the things that you need to be in that VAR space under pressure. And give them the support and the tools that they need. Some of that support is around tactical analysis, football insights. At the moment, we're not able to go outside of the refereeing fraternity to employ VARs. So
why is that?
FIFA don't allow, or the International FA Board, who kind of write the laws of the game, don't allow non-referees who are performing in the professional game or ex-referees who have performed in the professional game to be VARs. That position might change, but it's not something that's in our gift.
Something you want to change? Is it something you want to change?
I'm open to looking at all options that make this as good as it can be. I believe in VAR for the good of the game, and we want it to be accurate.
We constantly hear from ex-players. But if they took on us, we could do a good job. I mean, Danny Murphy's been bleating on about it. This was Murphy on this show. You do it.
Yeah.
Danny Murphy is formally applying for the job. Howard Webb, if you're listening, you've got a candidate.
I would be better at VAR than any of the people they've got doing it now. Any of them. Because I've watched and played more football than any of them.
Is this because you played
There's not one
15
VAR
years ago?
There's not one VAR official who's watched more football than me. Because I watch football non-stop and I'm brighter than the people who do it. I'm more intelligent and better at watching football than those guys doing it. Because some of the decisions they come up with, my 12-year-old would be better at than some of the decisions I've seen this season.
We get a strong coffee for Danny in here, just during the next break.
Are you trying to tell me I'm not bright enough to run VAR better than they're doing it?
You could probably do it, but I don't think you'd be better than the people they've got in place.
Well, then I might as well give up life.
Well, we don't want you to do that, Danny, that's for sure. But Howard, do you think ex-pros, like Danny, are unfairly dismissive of what your guys in the VAR truck are trying to achieve?
I think until you've sat in the chair and actually had a go at it under pressure, I think you'll never really know. I mean, I respect Danny's career on the field, and I also know, obviously, he clearly has a really good understanding of the game. He analyses it now for a living, and therefore, putting him in that chair, he might be really good at it. We don't know until we see. But I think people understand and recognise that refereeing's tough. I think they know it's not an easy job. But they've never done it, but they recognise it's hard. I think most people assume that being a VAR is easier than it is because you sat watching screens, you're watching the game. But like I said earlier, it's not just like watching the game. I went to a seminar a few weeks ago in Madrid, and I had a go at being a VAR, probably for the first time in an actual game situation. It was obviously not a competitive game, but there's lots happening. It's almost like patting your tummy and rubbing your head at the same time. You're watching a situation at one end that could be a penalty, but the penalty's not given. And very quickly the play moves up to the other end, because the game's still ongoing.
Sure.
And there's another penalty appeal 10 seconds later, but that's not given either. So you're still checking the first one, hang on, thinking, give me the angle. I need to go through a cycle of angles to see whether or not the non-award of a penalty is clearly wrong. At the same time, I've got another potential penalty coming up at the other end, and the game's still ongoing.
Did you pass the test?
Not really, no, because I've not been through the training. I know VAR inside out. I would suggest I'm kind of like as clued up about the process as anybody in the world.
Yeah.
And yet, practically sitting there doing it is a whole.
But isn't that about resource deployment, Howard? Isn't that about allocating resource to attending to certain areas of the game? So you've got one set of VAR to look at an offensive position, one set of VAR to look at a defensive position. So they don't have to multitask. They don't have to bounce from one end of the pitch to the other. Isn't that what that's about?
Yeah.
And are you happy with the standards that are currently being exhibited by the referees? Are you happy with it, or do you think you really have to start raising the game? Because I think you do, and I think you are beginning to do it.
So on the first point about splitting responsibilities, we have a team in there. We have a VAR and AVR. I absolutely encourage them to work together. So when the VAR's checking that first penalty situation,
join it up, yeah.
The AVR's watching live play and communicating what's happening out there. I've got to say, I've been impressed by the level of communication between the guys. I think the communication that you heard last night, I hope, left you with an impression of a professional, competent group of people.
It's pretty slick. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've worked on that a lot. We've brought in some coaches. We brought in a coach from Rugby League who's been exposed to TMOing, for some time, looking for expertise outside of just our sport as well. And we're looking to do that more. We're looking to recruit a new VAR manager, a whole range of coaches. Our coaching director's an ex-player who played 700 times in the Football League. So, we're looking for people from outside of just refereeing as well. Do I think the standards are where they need to be? We're always looking to be better. Of course, you'd expect me to say that, and it's true. We're looking at opportunities to be the best we can be. We're bringing in those resources, including that football insights, the tactical analysis that we need. The game's changed. I mean, it's changed so much. When I used to be on the field, the goal kicks would be taken long. I'd be on the halfway line looking for a 9-on-5 challenge. We don't see goal kicks in the Premier League being taken long anymore.
That's a great point.
They played short and we play through the press.
But just to be clear, until FIFA say yes, you can't have ex-players working in the truck.
Correct. We can use their expertise in some kind of consultancy role behind the scenes, but we can't put them into the VAR chair at the moment.
Okay, Howard, stay with us. More after this.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.